Aloha mai kako. You are watching Hawaii Political Reporter.
Aloha, and thank you for watching Hawaii Political Reporter. Let's start off with a little bit of local news, and the local news, unfortunately, I can't give to you because my internet service is down, but I would suggest for the Hawaii County that you take a look at the Hawaii County Council records. If you go to the clerk of the Hawaii County Council, you should be able to get online and look at the agenda that's coming up. That's always worthwhile. So that's my recommendation for local news for today. And for state, I suggest you look at either the Hawaii Free Press and or Honolulu Civil Beat. That's kind of both sides of the spectrum there. And of course, we'll be giving more independent and other sources that we recommend soon. Okay, starting off with national news now, we're going to have a few topics we're going to briefly go over. The first one is basically economics, and this is according to the Washington Post. Most Americans accumulating debt faster than they're saving for retirement. So, I mean, this, as it says, this is by Michael Fletcher. It says a majority of Americans with 401k type savings accounts are accumulating debt faster than they are setting money aside for retirement, further undermining the nation's troubled system for old age saving, the report says. Okay, so this is one bit of news. If you wish more, of course, go to that site. This is from CNS News. This is Census Bureau. Means-tested government benefit recipients outnumber full-time year-round workers. And this is by Terrence P. Jeffrey. And this is Americans who are recipients of means-tested government benefits in 2011, outnumbered year-round full-time workers, according to the Census Bureau. They also outnumbered the total population of the Philippines. There were 108,592,000 people in the United States in the fourth quarter of 2011, and undoubtedly higher now, who are recipients of one or more mean-tested government programs, according to the Census Bureau. And there are 101,716,000 people who worked full-time year-round in 2011, and that includes both private and government workers. That means there are about 1.07 people getting some forms of means-tested government benefit for every one person working full-time year-round. You know, I have a lot of Democrat and progressive friends, and God bless them in many ways, but I got to tell you one thing that's really aggravating. It's always tax more, tax more, tax more. Take it from the billionaires. You know what? If you take all the money from the billionaires, everything they have, it's still not going to pay for this. We're nowhere near. We're in trillions of debt. You can steal or confiscate, or in many cases rightfully so, billions from some people or even corporations, which are usually the ones who are paying off the government and causing these problems to begin with. Some of the top-level dishonest corporations, certainly not all. But that is the problem we're having here. There's not enough money to go around here. People are milking the system, and as Ron Paul says, if you subsidize something, you get more of it. This is what's happening, and it's obvious this cannot stand. If you have more people consuming than producing, it's not going to last for long. Moving on, another horrific sign that this country is going down, and it's not going to make glaring headlines, but if you think about this, this is horrible. And this is according to CNN Money. It says student homelessness hits record high. How high? How high? There were 1.2 million homeless students during the 2011-2012 academic year. Now, yes, some of them are runaways. I'm sure this is maybe not totally counted. But even if this is in the hundreds of thousands, this is obviously a very ill indicator for us and our society. And it's certainly going to be difficult for them to have a decent base to get their studies correctly, which are, in many cases, the future of this country. Okay, now we're moving on a little bit to the Obamacare story. If you're a regular viewer of this program, you probably know I'm not in love with Obamacare, but even trying to be neutral and, you know, unbiased on it, and I'll admit I am biased. I hate it. I think it's a abomination for many ways. But this is according to the Weekly Standard. Millions of Americans are losing their health plans because of Obamacare. There's no way, okay, you can give a whole bunch more without obviously taking a bunch more. And that taking a bunch more is going to come from the people and their policies, or if they can't jack them up enough, or if it's not worthy for the corporations who are running this thing. By the way, I believe that's the largest part of what was happening here. This is no program to help the poor people. This was not that. This was about their corporate masters buying influence, and they wanted another further monopoly and consolidation of their market. This is what this is about. But at any rate, or at least in large parts, but at least at any rate, you know, the prices are going up. My premium, I found out after the last show, doubled. It's doubled. And I did nothing different. Okay, I really don't even, I'm really seriously consider dropping the whole thing altogether. Okay, for a lot of reasons. Screw it. I'm not going to get I'm not going to get pirated and taken. It's just not going to happen. Okay, next one. This is Think Tank. Health insurance premiums will almost double in Wisconsin. Well, I can tell you mine doubled in Hawaii, so I totally believe it. This was according to the National Review Online. Okay, elderly patients sick over losing doctors under Obamacare. Now, here's another gigantic problem that's going to happen. If it's not, these doctors, you can say whatever you want about them, but, I mean, they are put through a heck of a course. They have a tremendous amount of liability, pressure put on them. Overhead and operating costs, and if you make it not worthwhile for them to do business, okay, trying to overly, these are not untrained workers, okay. These people deserve and have to have make a living that's pretty commensurate with what they've been put into it. If you're going to continue the same system, now that's a whole other topic. We could get into how the Chinese ultimately were doing, basically medics, okay, and they could handle 80% of the workload with a fraction of the training within 6 months. I mean, there's many things we could do to make the systems better, but again, it's all regulated and controlled at the top in Washington so they can distribute the funds to their campaign donors and such. It is not for the people's benefit. That's the key thing. I just have to, say it again, and I think you probably realize it, or if not, please seriously consider this. The government in general is not being run for the people. It is being run for their benefit and those of their cronies and those who, they like and their friends, etc. Okay, so the elderly patients losing doctors over Obamacare. Here's elderly people who most need it and are least able to deal with this in many cases. Sometimes they don't have the family to help them. This is another very ill indicator of Obamacare. And, the goals, and the stated goals were noble, and there was ways they could do it. There were practical ways we could still do this. But it's going to take a real big, thought, much more than Obamacare. It's going to take a real paradigm shift in that, and that's including us as, Americans being responsible for our health, and that's a difficult sell, okay? So Obamacare mandate may be delayed. This is according to MarketWatch.com, if you care to see that. There's some talk amongst, as you may know, of some of the senators, they're nervous, squeaming because this is not going over well. Not just the website, the whole thing in general is it's going to fall very flat, I believe. It's going to be torturous for a lot of the Democrats. And so they're trying to get a little, protection and fire, so to speak, buffer, or what do they call it, fire blocking or whatever between them and what's going to be coming, I believe. Senator proposes law. If you like your health plan, you can keep it. This is in the Weekly Standard, and this is Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin will propose a new law next week called If You Like Your Health Plan, You Can Keep It. Sounds fair enough. I mean, can we have some choice, or does everything have to be dictated from some all-knowing, wonderful bureaucrat, okay, 3 to 5,000 miles away from us, or even possibly less, depending upon where you are. Okay, National Review Online. Congress's exemption from Obamacare. By the way, this wonderful plan that they hoisted upon us, they're exempt from, or at least some of them, okay, and their staff, they've given special subsidies and such, and this is just ridiculous, okay. It's another double standard. Let's let them eat cake, as they say. We're a different thing. We're like, if you know from the quote from, I think it was Marie Antoinette or whatever in the French Revolution. So us peasants, we can suffer through it, but they don't have to. Rand Paul, I think it's Rand Paul, is going to be introducing a resolution that basically what they hoist upon us, they need to live with and deal with themselves. Fair enough, okay? It's just like somebody I know who owns a company and doesn't use their own product. Well, that's not a good indicator, and honestly, it doesn't make them keep on top of what's going to happen, and it's ultimately, I believe, going to be very bad news for that company, and certainly the customers themselves aren't going to have the best service, because if they're not using it, the people who run the company aren't going to be as aware of the flaws, the problems, what needs to be improved, the evolution, and that's not good. And this is why the government should be not only a matter of quote-unquote, here's true fairness, but also to make the thing better, okay, because they can see the problems themselves, but no, they're isolated from it. It's just hoisted upon us, and they'll give us some BS, platitudes and others, to cover it up. Okay, now this is moving on to a slight bit of politics, and I'm not going to piss off too many Democrats here, even though I could tell you I could really, really let loose on this one. This is my unfavorite, or certainly one of the top unfavorites in the Democrat Party. This is regarding swampland. This is the time.com. They have a thing called Swampland, which is really what it is. And it says, 6 presidential campaign things Hillary Clinton is test driving. Well, if you do believe in her, okay, and think that she's a good woman, I urge you to carefully look at her ties to the Council of Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission. Know that she's a warmonger, fascist-supporting, oligarchy-supporting, okay, control freak. Look, that's what she is. She's not for the people. She is not for the people. And for the women to think, oh, we need a women president and all this, please come up with someone else. Honestly, you can't do worse. This woman is, and even if she was good, it's the past. Come on, enough Bushes and Clintons around here. Let's move forward with some fresh new ideas instead of a repeat of failed policies and failed ideologies and paradigms. Okay, now this is going into the news of the world, and this is Henninger. Obama's credibility is melting. This is on the online Wall Street Journal. Basically, it says here and abroad, Obama's partners are concluding they cannot trust him. Well, you know, some of the things that Obama has done, believe it or not, even though I certainly don't love him and never have voted for him, even though I would have voted for him over Romney and still would, even though that's a very difficult thing to say. But, you know, he's tried in some ways, I think, to walk the middle line, try to do a little bit different. And so I give him some credit. Like, you know, even right now what's happening, we're going to be covering this soon, with Saudi Arabia. This is a gigantic, difficult, potentially dangerous shift for the United States. And, you know, some things I give them, okay? I mean, at least maybe in the background there, they're trying to do a few things. But overall, he has been duplicitous, and that's really the main problem, okay? And, you know, come on, all of what he came in the initial campaign, a lot of us, even, you know, those of us independents could buy into, okay? But the promises haven't been lived into. I mean, transparency, how about transparency? All right, let's just go right there. That's enough. We could go on forever. Okay, so now we're going to go to, this is News of the World also, and this is from ABC News, I think it's abcnews.go.com, and this is about pirates seizing 2 American ships off Nigeria. I've argued this out a little bit online with a friend of mine, and basically my point is the military resources were properly being used instead of abused, put where we don't need them to be. We could be handling this. Yes, Somalia is big. If you look, there's basically essentially 2 long coasts there. But I believe that with quick response, you know, as far as like a panic button on there, satellite, okay, you know, redirection, the CIA has them everywhere, and drones, they could track the perpetrators as they leave, and we could be and should be, okay, using our military forces for a genuine use. Now, not without getting into this too much, the Somali coastline has been basically taken over, okay, by international forces, and the fishermen are being screwed there. So there is more to the story than as usually is, okay? International big corporate forces and stuff are screwing the local people there, but still, okay, hijacking, you know, we need to deal with this. So this is another issue. Of course, it'd be best to solve both. Final story of the news of the world, and this is from CNN.com. It says, rights groups challenge U.S. on drone strikes in Pakistan and Yemen. I'm just going to write a couple paragraphs from this. Just imagine you're sitting down at dinner or whatever, your family, your friends, maybe a little soccer match you just come back from, whatever you're relaxing, fishing. Hanging above them in the evening sky were 4 remotely piloted aircraft, drones. Without warning, the aircraft unleashed a volley of missiles that struck the tent, killing 8 people. A few minutes later, after other villagers had approached the wreckage to help the victims, the drones fired again, deepening the carnage. By the end, 18 people were dead, including a 14-year-old boy, and 22 others were wounded, including an 8-year-old girl. Body parts were scattered everywhere, without heads and bodies. I could keep going. This is not going to make friends. This really isn't going to make friends. And if you're going to do this, send in a hit team or something, but don't terrorize the whole village. And this is just unexcusable, immorally wrong, and strategically stupid, I believe, and tactically beyond overkill. So that's it for the news for this week. Moving on to our urgent and watch segment. This is events that are potentially of huge impact to all of us in the near future, generally speaking. Topping that off is from the Mail Online. This is a Daily Mail out of the United Kingdom. It says Saudi Arabia severs diplomatic ties with the U.S. over response in conflict to Syria. That's probably certainly one of it. And if you listen to previous shows, or you can go to James Corbett, you'll find out about Bandar Bush and the ties of the Saudis to terrorism, and as we've seen with bin Laden and such, and how we've actually been fighting the wars. Basically, what in a simple terms, in the Arab world, if you probably don't know, there's the Shiites and the Sunnis, 2 large groups, both trying for dominance. And this has been going on for centuries. And the Saudis are the Sunni Muslims, and they've been using our military to do their dirty work. And this is one of the things over the oil. Now, going beneath this, as if you know, the petrodollar, our dollar, the status of our currency is world reserve. as a world reserve currency is largely dependent upon the fact that it is the medium of exchange for petroleum. It's called the Petro Dollar. And Saudi Arabia is probably the largest prop in keeping that dollar as the world exchange. If it loses its world currency or world reserve currency status, then the dollar's value will plummet. Our exports will be much more expensive. Inflation will rear its ugly head. And all this printing that they've been done to trying to stimulate the morbid economy will drastically fail, and we'll have tremendous inflation, which is very likely coming at some point. It's just the dollars aren't in circulation now. You could look into something called the velocity of money if you're not aware of what that is. Basically, the money's being hoarded, but once it's put into circulation and or the foreign currency, if the foreign holders of our currency start to put it back into our economy, we're going to have a huge problem. And there is a lot of currency out there that's being, in fact, I think maybe even possibly the majority is being held by foreigners. Okay, so what's going on beneath this, though, this story? And they basically, this says Saudi Arabia is an important ally in the U.S. as it provides a secure source of oil. Saudi diplomats now promise a major shift in relations with the U.S. over inaction in the conflict in Syria. Well, sorry, the people here of this country don't want us to go fight in your wars, okay? Now, on the other hand, you could say, well, they're the provider of our oil, which is our lifeline. It's true. This country is industrialized. Without the oil, we're dead. Like it or not, environmentalist or not, that is the reality, okay? Secretary of State says he's committed to keeping a good relationship with the Saudis. Let's dig a little deeper, though. What's happening? China is now becoming the largest consumer of the Saudis' oil. In fact, the largest refinery in the world is being built by the Chinese and the Saudis. So they are taking over our spot because they're obviously producing and consuming more than we are. We're not producing. We're just consuming here. And, that's the reality. And producing and consuming, that's, two legs of demand for the oil. Industry, heavy industry drives a huge demand for petroleum and petroleum-based products. So the Saudi customer is basically shifting to China. It's becoming bigger, and also potentially here with all the fracking, which in general I am very mixed on. I think there's some uses and also many safeguards that need to be put on it, especially as it harms individuals and destroys their land. Okay, but we have the potential to produce most of our own petroleum, and I think the Saudis understand that. And this is one time where Obama is moving to make some peace and maybe or be a little bit more neutral in this blood feud, okay, between the Sunnis and the Shiites, which we really should be. As George Washington and others have said, we need to be friends and trade with all, okay? We don't need to have these special relationships that get us into problems. We're seeing it now. Okay, U.S.-Saudi crack-up reaches a dramatic tipping point. More information if you're interested at WashingtonPost.com. Okay, legislation curtailing NSA domestic spying to be introduced Tuesday. And this is from Breitbart.com, and Breitbart News has learned that Representative James Sensenbrenner, Republican of Wisconsin, will introduce a major legislation to rein in the NSA surveillance activities on American citizens on Tuesday. And I'm pretty sure that he is the man who wrote a large part of that, and he's finding the original Patriot Act, that is, and this NSA which was derivative, or they certainly extracted more rights out of that than they were given. That's a large part of it, was taken from his bill, and now he realizes it's gone too far, and he's trying to pull it in. This is one of the people, the original enablers, so to speak, coming around to God, so to speak. Okay, now here's a gigantic one. I'm not going to go too much into this. As you may know, the Federal Reserve is a privately owned. It's nothing to do with the federal government, not really. There's no connection. The money that is made from the Federal Reserve goes to private shareholders. Now, I was just listening to a little bit, and I highly suggest you do. It has a slow start, but gets good at maybe 15, 20 minutes in especially, about how the Federal Reserve was created. And apparently at the time, and this is around the 1910 time period, Americans, as they know now, okay, we were being ruled and dominated by large fascist, corporations, huge mega corporations, and they basically wanted to break that up, especially the bankers. I forget the exact word they call it, the bankers trust or whatever. They had control, basically a stranglehold over the economy and the people, as they do now. So what happens, these bankers knew this was coming, and they figured, as you'll find out, a lot of people do, they made a false opposition, and they went and secretly concocted a bill. And this was put up by the Republican, okay, at that time, the Republican majority whip in the Senate, apparently. And they came up with a bill that, basically did everything they wanted to eliminate competition. They essentially formed a cartel. And that's what's been going on ever since. They've been sucking our blood. And please look into it. The Federal Reserve is not good. It is a huge negative. Okay, it's evil. It's truly evil. If that was gone, our economy right there, even though we're still not nearly producing enough, would have a tremendous boost in vitality. Just simply getting rid of that, albeit it might be painful for a while for the transition. Okay, so anyways, this is on CNBC.com, and this is Senator Paul threatens to hold Yellen nomination. Janet Yellen's going to be nominated as the new Federal Reserve Chairman, and he wants to put an audit there or try to do something to break this evil cartel, which is truly at the root of most of our problems in this country that we as individuals do not directly create. In other words, systemic issues, problems, and government corruption. That's it, the Federal Reserve. So, like him, hate him, be somewhere in the middle. I hope you back Senator Paul on this and follow this, because this would be, if he can get it through, the Federal Reserve basically buys off through their many facets of domination and control, corporate control, most of the media and most of the senators. Okay, so it's unlikely to go through, but maybe, you never know. It could. I know at one point it was within one vote, and over the last 100 years there has been some resistance to that. Okay, continuing on in our urgent news section, here are two that are just gigantic ramifications. Please think about these and do what you can to make sure they don't happen. Starting off, this is from the NewYorkTimes.com. Federal prosecutors in a policy shift cite warrantless wiretap as evidence. What's happening now, they're basically trying to push the fact that they can use this as evidence in trials, warrantless wiretaps. Now think about the scope of that. If this becomes an accepted practice, then there truly is a big brother society here. There's no limits on what they can do. And they're not even being shy. This is another of the Obama broken promises as respect of civil rights. This is a gigantic police state big brother grab here. And, even if you think, well, we got to get the criminals, you understand there are political, dissidents, people, and this shifts from, administration to administration. You may like it now, okay? 4 years from now, you may be the enemy in the crosshairs. You could be an innocent victim. For example, let's say that they wanted to get somebody that you're connected with, but you have no guilt of anything at all. Okay, but the other person's a family member or whatever. Well, they can do things with you, okay, to use you as leverage, and they do against this person. This is extremely dangerous, and I pray to God that we don't do this, because this truly is going to be a dystopian society coming if this happens. And you should look at the ACLU and Cato.org and other civil rights supporting as libertarians, of course, and a few progressive Democrats. Unfortunately, they are just pushed aside, the honest ones like Dennis Kucinich and such. So I think the Democrat Party, for all their lip service, and it is gigantic lip service on civil rights, is full of BS. As you can see, the president and his administration, the Democratic, civil rights-controlled party, are now trying to foist this unbelievable, unconstitutional measure to make a police state down our throats. Okay. Here's one or even more scary. Another great administration situation here. This is from WashingtonTimes.com. Armed agents seize records of reporter. Washington Times prepares legal action. What they did is they made a false raid on the husband and went in and stole her notes of contacts of whistleblowers in the administration. So basically, this was an illegal search and seizure. They stole, again, what they took, the records were not on the search warrant. So now they're even misusing their own system. This is absolutely out of control. So what this is intimidation of the press and intimidation of whistleblowers. Mr. Transparency and Mr. Change has changed only for the worse, though. This is no transparency. I couldn't even believe Bush would be doing anything like this. Dirty stuff, maybe, okay? But this absolutely blatant. That's astounding, and I hope you as Democrats, okay, feel that this is wrong and support libertarians or get pressure on your people to come to God, so to speak, and do the right thing here. This is unexcusable. Okay, and this is again on the Daily Caller. They go more into this on the feds seizing the records. You can maybe see it. But what's going to happen now, there's going to be lawsuits, and thank God she was working for a large enough paper, the Washington Times, to make a stink about this, because this has to be. And I as every journalist, and this is another thing, they want to limit the definition of journalists, so again, they can have it only through their corporate filtered and approved media, so the government, corporate, complex basically keeps us in the dark and keeps us fed the pablum that they want us to believe to keep them from the true issues and the true stories that are going on and the ramifications of them. All right, moving on to our science and technology and paradigm shifting segment. Here is one that is very gigantic, okay, and this could be a gigantic paradigm shift, unfortunately, in a negative direction at this point. And this is according to the dailymail.co.uk. And this is, we've reached the end of antibiotics. Top CDC expert declares that miracle drugs that have saved millions are no match against superbugs because people have over-medicated themselves. That's what his reasoning is, which is probably valid in some cases. But the point is, if the antibiotics, as you probably know if you go back your history, this has truly been a miracle drug. Many humans and other creatures have been saved by these wonderful, I mean truly wonderful applications of technology, and looks like that reign may be over, and the potential for highly devastating diseases and pestilence and such is there. So this is one to be aware of, and of course keep yourself healthy, and maybe you do have to be a little bit more paranoid about the viruses and what you're dealing with now. All right, moving on to our PCBS of the week. This is one in the Weekly Standard, and this is from Alan Grayson, a Democrat, who does a lot of good things also. But in this case, I think he's absolutely insane and literally, implying incendiary and, propagating incendiary tactics, and very un-American and very, very ignorant. And this is from the Weekly Standard, the blog. Dem Rep uses burning cross to spell Tea Party. First off, for many people who are not aware, the Tea Party is not one thing. Even though the Democratic Party, you can say, is a mass, it's really a lot of different factions. The Tea Party has had several different generations. I was part of the, I would say, Generation 2 Tea Party before they went to the right wing, really right wing stuff, military hawks and religious right. But you know something? This is ridiculous. First off, Mr. Grayson, can you name me one person ever, okay, that has been hurt, harmed, okay, or directly hindered, okay, by the Tea Party? This is a political movement, okay? This is not a movement to go and, lynch people and to hurt them. And it's so ridiculous because there are a lot of black people, or certainly some black people, in the Tea Party too. So, let's look at one, Herman Cain. He was the Tea Party candidate. Do you think he's, going to be burning KKK crosses? This is absolutely incendiary, splitting, divisive politics, and it's unfortunate and ridiculous from you. And I got to tell you, your district, between you and Alan West, has got to be one of the most schizophrenic districts out there, because each one of you in your own way has got half of something good and half of something just ridiculous. And I got to tell you, this is a district they really need a third choice, because both of these candidates there are extreme. All right, our final segment for the week is the person of the week, and in this case, I believe it's Edward Snowden. And the last week, unfortunately, we didn't have time to cover nearly as much as I would like, but thanks to Edward Snowden, many governments of the world are now waking up to the abuse of the United States government by them and their people and their leaders. Many people in the U.S. are waking up to the abuse, okay, from social media sites to phone calls to everything else. Big Brother is being thrust upon us, and a very wasteful, monetary and productivity-wise use, and also, most importantly, unconstitutional, abusive situation of the people. And why is he this person of the week this week? Because we have a Stop Watching Us rally against mass surveillance. This was probably mostly inspired and due to Edward Snowden. He has created real change in this country, what he's done, and there are others before. Russ Tice, there's many other good whistleblowers, Julian Assange, others out there, but Snowden really was the, maybe the straw that broke the camel's back. The right person at the right time, making a huge difference. This story, by the way, if you care to see it, is on RT.com, and it's a hashtag Stop Watching Us rally against mass surveillance, and this was held at Washington, D.C., And it's a collective of 100 public advocacy groups, among them the ACLU, Freedom Works, as well as individuals like Chinese artists, activists, etc. Thanks again for listening. We look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, make a great one. Take care. Aloha.
Given up in the Federal Reserve Act. The Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express.
You try a hide and destroy a freedom man. You seek agenda. We know you anti-American. You come forward American Constitution. 1913, corrupt in the system. Devalue dollar, hyperinflation. The Federal Reserve, controlled by Lucifer. He can see you lying.